the faster you could raise the collective intelligence of your team, the more that they could be competitive, right?
Yes.
And so going back to this, the M is motivation. So I would always say, if you want to learn something new, check in with your motivation, because here's the thing, all learning is state dependent.
Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host, the expert Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 348. Hope you're awesome as always and life is treating you good. Even though the world is a little chaos right now, we can create our own worlds. And that's really the truth, you know what I mean? It's especially how the brain works. And we're going to get into today's episode in a little bit because it's a pretty good one. But yeah, how the brain works, you literally filter your reality. You really do, right? So we take in over 2 million bits of information through our 5 senses every single second. Think about that. We can only process a tiny amount of that. So you got to ask the question, what the heck am I not seeing? It's true, right? What the heck am I not experiencing? And we've all had those experiences. Do you know sometimes you, especially if you're a dude, you know what I mean? We have actually primal genetics, so we're very focused for hunting. But if you know how many times have you put the keys somewhere, or maybe not the keys, something in your house, and you're looking around and your girl or your partner says to you, they're over there, and you're like, I can't see them, I don't know where they are. And you've checked like 5 times, and then someone walks up and goes, they're there. And you go, oh yeah. Well, that's how your reality works. Literally, that's how your brain is wired to focus on what you already know, right? Or what your brain is programmed to see. And so when you start looking at that, it's really, really eye-opening, because you really have to understand that everybody has their own version of reality. Everybody, right? From all the experiences you've ever had, the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, the highs, has all led you to seeing the world as you are now. And the thing about that, that's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, but it is what it is. But when you look at business, you gotta, and even opportunities, you gotta really open your brain up to think, wow, what am I not seeing? How am I not solving this problem around this business? If I stepped out of this situation and looked in from a different angle, what would be the perspective that I could use to be able to solve this issue, or get a solution, or get a resolution, or engage in communication, or, marketing standpoint, whatever it is, right? Or sales angle, right? So when you start to understand this, it's badass, right? Because it means that every single thing that we can do in our life, we can actually navigate through it in a different way, or an optimal way. And what I love that Jim Kwik is who we're going to use the clip for today. And Jim's a badass. I was in a mastermind with him years and years ago. He's worked with every person you can imagine in Hollywood, including presidents and everybody else, all about memory, really working with actors. Think about that. If they could learn to memorize your lines, do you think it might make your job easier? Right. So that's the type of thing he does. It's about brain performance, power, right? So speeding up reading, things like that. And that's why I love Jim. And what was cool about the little clip I showed you, he said everything, including learning and memory, is state dependent. Now, you should know me by now if you're a regular listener, as we're on episode 348, you know what I mean? But one of the things that my superpowers is it taken over the years, it's been entrepreneurs, it's been people going through IPO, high pressure environments, everyone you can imagine, and being able to design a peak version of them, install it, and then get them to light it up on demand. And when they can do that, well, That's how you enter flow states. That's how you step onto a stage that you've never stepped onto. That's how you demand higher prices. That's how you close deals. That's how you launch businesses, right? That's how you manage teams. It's also to do with something which is my creation called neuro-conditioning. And it is state dependent. Whether it's specific states, whether it's peak states, or even removing or moving away from negative states. So states are really, really powerful when we can understand the deepness of modeling, the science behind it, and really how to use them to make sure that you are kicking ass, man, in every area of your life. And especially what this podcast is about is performance. It's business, right? Because ultimately what we want in business is, yes, success, but it's kind of freedom, right? It's freedom to wake up if we want to and not if we don't, right? It's freedom to be able to travel where we want, live in luxury, help thousands and thousands, if not millions of people. This is what business is all about, and entrepreneurism. And when we can understand that version of you that is a badass is replicable in every area of your life, but especially moving up from 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, 10 figures, right? That is a version of you that is expanding and growing. And when you understand your brain or your mind is like a muscle, then well, guess what? Well, we got to learn to pump it the right way, right? And that's what today's episode is all about. So just before we jump into speaking to Mr. Jim, I want to help you, right? Because the truth is, every coach needs a coach, every expert needs an expert, and I've worked with from everyone you can imagine, from royalty right down to startups, to world champions, to VCs, to people launching digital products, scaling digital products, and that's why I connected with Mr. Ryan Alford, right? So we have a badass training that's coming out hopefully next week. It's all done. We're just putting the final touches on it. And it's really going to show you the behind the scenes of what you're going to learn from us and in our community called the Radical Formula. Yeah, it's about brand engineering. Yes, personal brand engineering. Because think about anybody that you know, including Jim, right? Including Jim, who you're going to meet today if you don't know him. He has built a personal brand. What does that mean? That means that you click on his website or his social media, you know exactly what he does, exactly who he's worked with, and exactly if the things that he's teaching are for you, right? And then he's got massive exposure so he can help more and more people. Well, that's not by accident. That's designed. It's engineered. And so me and Ryan have come along, 45 years combined in this game. He's one of the top marketers around. I'm a badass at what I do. So together, I thought we'd create something special called the Radical Formula. So you can go over there right now to theradicalformula.com. You can also jump and connect with us on Instagram and connect with us in the Facebook group. And all of those places, we're going to start doing lives. We've got multiple trainings, masterclasses coming out. This is going to grow into something really, really special. And the biggest thing there is, well, guess what? The community that we want to give you. So head over to theradicalformula.com and join us in your journey to scale your business to 7 figures. Sound good? Awesome. So go there now, remember it. And what else should we do? Well, should we go and meet Jim? I think we go and meet Jim Kwik, and he's going to blow your mind up. This is a brilliant interview. And I think you're going to love it. I will see you at the end of the show.
Your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk is a program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you programmed your supercomputer not to. They say the two most powerful words in the English language are also the smallest, I am. Because whatever you put after that, complete that sentence with, is going to determine your destination, your destiny. And I also feel like you have to fall in love again with the person in the mirror who has been through so much, but is still standing. Once you know yourself, you need the courage to be yourself. Because the truth is, every single person that's listening and watching this could do that and a lot more.
Oh my gosh.
The thing is, we weren't taught. You know, if anything, we were taught a lie, that somehow our capabilities, our potential, our memory, for instance, our learning abilities, our intelligence is somehow fixed, like our shoe size.
Wow.
And it's absolutely not true. We've discovered more about the human brain in the past 20 years than the previous 2,000 years combined. And what we found is we've grossly underestimated our own potential, our own capabilities. And that's the thing, it's just because we weren't taught. And I really think the nature of the work that you do, that I do, that our community is really backing, is about transcending. It's about ending the trance.
Wow.
Transcend, end the trance, ending this massive gnosis in media and marketing that's telling us that we're broken, that we need to be fixed, that we're not enough. And I feel like that is what holds us back, you know, this illusion, if you will.
You said if there was one skill to master in the 21st century,
Yes.
in your opinion, it is what? What would you say?
Your ability to learn faster.
To learn faster.
I really do believe that if there was, let's say there was a genie and they could grant you one wish, anything you want.
Yeah.
Most people would wish for more wishes. That would be the hack, right? If somebody, Aladdin's going to be one wish, you ask for more wishes. But if I was a learning genie and I could help you learn any subject, any skill, you know, anything, what would you want? What would you wish for? You would ask to learn how to learn. I did a program at Google, and I remember hearing this from the chairman said, the amount of information that's been created from the dawn of humanity, since human beings walked the earth to the year 2003, which is only about a decade and a half ago, that amount of information is now created every 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
48 hours online. Think about the blogs, the podcasts, the social media, that much content. Our brain, they say we use such a small potential of it.
Yeah.
We use all our brain,
Okay.
but some people use it more efficiently than other people.
But you talk an awful lot about the way we were learning 100 years ago is still the same way we're taught to learn. And a simple thing you said, because almost everybody listening to this, well, I know they are. They're listening to this. It's a podcast.
Right.
They're taking notes.
Sure.
They go to seminars. They take notes. They're reading books. And just a simple difference in the way we take notes, even.
Right.
You have told, I didn't even realize this, but this is an old way to take notes. There's a different way to experience even note taking. Can you give some tips on that?
So I recommend everybody takes notes of this specific episode because it boosts retention. People don't realize this. There's a learning curve, but there's also a forgetting curve. Science is saying that within 2 days, just 48 hours of listening to a podcast, reading a book, going to a conference, getting a coaching, 80% of it, up to 80% is lost.
Incredible.
And that's, you know, as somebody who's investing time, energy, treasure into something, to lose all that, you know, and so you want to be able to hold that on.
Okay.
And so one of the ways of doing it is by taking notes. And we did a whole episode on proper note taking, and really one that's more brain friendly.
Okay.
Most people, and what they found is the worst way of taking notes actually is verbatim.
Which is the way I take notes.
Yeah,
Well,
verbatim,
I used to.
full transcription. And they study this, you know, at universities because they test people. They have people take word for word. And one of the reasons why is because there's just so much information.
Okay.
Right? You have 18 pages of word for word. You don't know what's most important. But they found the best way of actually taking notes were more on keywords and relevancy. So for example, one of the ways of taking notes that I recommend is taking a piece of paper and putting a line straight down the page.
Okay.
And on the left side, what I'm doing is I'm capturing information.
Okay.
Capturing. So we could talk about how to remember names and how to read faster and how to learn skills faster, how to change your habits. That would be on the left-hand column. You're capturing information.
Okay.
But on the right side, instead of capturing, you're creating. What does that mean? It means that you're creating and you're building on this. You're putting your impression. So essentially on the left side, you're taking notes, but on the right side, you're making notes. And there's a clear distinction, right, between just capturing information and actually create the creative process.
Why does that matter?
It matters because if you're, first of all, for focus, a lot of people, when they're listening to something, their mind will go somewhere else. They'll get distracted. So here, instead of it going somewhere else, it goes on the right side of the page, which is, let's say, left side, right brain. Left brain, right brain. Left brain's more logical and words and language and linear. But on the right side is your imagination, it's your creativity. So your creativity could go there.
Okay, crew. Let me jump in there. I wanted to jump in a few times, but I just let Jim do Jim, right? And the questions were beautiful. So let's review that for a second. Let's review that. And you might want to check this interview out. It's really good by Ed Mylett. Ed Mylett. He does really cool interviews. He's got a really good podcast, real kind guy. And just hyper intelligent, brilliant business dude. But think about this, right? So what did I start the podcast with explaining? I started explaining about your filter system in your brain, right? And everything being state dependent. But let's just talk about that filter system. Because what Jim explaining then, I'll explain it my way, is that he spoke about within 24 hours, we lose about 80% of what we consciously learned, right? And that's the concept, consciously. We're not embedding this deep in the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind is really the software, right? So it's like we have temporary holding, which is the conscious mind. And then we have the software where it's installed, which is the unconscious mind, right? So what happens is within 24 hours, we lose 80% of it because we haven't installed it. Does that make sense? So we have a learning curve and a losing curve. And so what happens is, and I love the way he spoke about note-taking, I think it's fantastic, and we can only focus on a handful of things. Actually, ultimately, we can only focus on one thing at one time. But really, we can focus on about 3 to 5 things consciously before things become overloaded. Now, that does depend on your state, right? So your business version of you has those 3 to 5 things before we become overloaded, and also your father or mother version of you has. And you see, you get the idea? These are very different versions of you, which means we can get overloaded in different parts of our life. And that's why state control of being able to separate, design, install, and then separate and step into different versions of you, it becomes extremely important for this reason. If we don't, then the wiring just gets very, very messy between, and that can cause chaos. And that's with a lot of entrepreneurs. That's what I help people with, right? And that's what we're doing in the Radical Formula for sure. If you're going to grow your business, you need to be able to switch on and switch off. But what he spoke about then was note-taking. Brilliant, right? So obviously he spoke about putting that line down the page and using your right brain and left brain, right? So on the right brain side, then guess what? That's more creative. Left, logic. We know that, right? And it's just a really clever way to make notes, because guess what? It's like what we're taught in school it's generally nonsense, right? It's archaic, outdated way to learn information. It's even like a degree. Does a degree really take 4 years? Well, that's a problem. It's a lot of information you got to take in for sure, but I know there's going to be in the future a more effective and faster way to retain information, but it's not taught this way. So it's taught by literally memorizing. That's generally how most people are taught in school. They're not even taught through the learning modalities of senses, or some people like to be very practical and practical. Some people like to know the how, some people like to know the why, some people like to know the what, right? And so when we can understand that, then we've got to really learn how we can adapt to the way we see life and the way our superpowers are. Does that make sense? I'm going on a bit of a rant, but hopefully that makes sense. So let's jump in and go and see what Jim is up to next. What he's talking about is the power of questions. And he's talking about questions because it's able to direct our focus onto where we are going next, right? And that next thing could be being happy. That next thing could be closing that deal, right? It's the outcome of what we want that we can ask questions towards, or solving a problem, right? Things like that. But let's just listen to Jim.
The other thing is it forces you to ask questions. I believe that questions are the answer. I think it's the essential for understanding, for critical thinking, for focus, for learning. If you ever want to read something, and let's say people feel absent-minded.
Yes.
They forget where they put things. Their wallet, their purse, their keys, or if not their keys, something larger like their car. You see the people in the finding, they forget where they parked their car. They read a page in a book at the end and forget what they just read. They'll get a name from somebody and they'll just forget it right away. One of the ways to insulate that is to ask questions, right? To ask questions about something. So for example, when I'm taking notes, I'll capture information on the left side, but on the right side, I'll write questions I have about what I'm learning. I'll ask myself questions like how I'm going to apply it. You know what the biggest challenge I have with the self-help personal development industry is that there's this massive lie that's being spread saying that knowledge is power.
Thinking is the process of asking and answering questions to yourself. That's why left and right page here matters. Everybody stay with us on that. That's all thinking is. That's all thought is.
Exactly, and you're capturing your thinking. And even the greatest minds out there, they journal. They're always creative. You know, you think about Leonardo da Vinci or Marie Curie, like they had their journals are worth fortunes.
Yes.
Right? And it's interesting asking this question, is it because they were geniuses? And when I say genius, I don't mean IQ. I mean they're exceptional in their field, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's technology, finance.
It's a form of genius.
Relationships, interpersonal skills, interpersonal communication. Is it because they're geniuses that they're taking all these notes, or is it because they're creating all these notes that make them geniuses, right? And so it's interesting. And so I like to journal. I think that that's extremely important. And the questions, though, to take knowledge and turn action, 3 main questions I obsess about. Number 1 is, how can I use this? I ask this all the time because I don't learn for the sake of learning. I learn for the sake of some kind of benefit from me or somebody I care about.
So I'm staying with you. This would be the right side of the page as I'm taking some notes.
So I'm taking notes, but I'm obsessed about it. So even if I'm not writing it down, even when I'm having a conversation with somebody or I'm listening, I'm in a conference, how can I use this? And this is the creativity part. It's like, oh wow, these are all the ways I could use this and apply this. The second question I ask religiously is after I ask, how can I use this? I'm asking myself, why must I use this? Why must I use this? Because here's the thing, a lot of people know what to do, they don't do what they know. You can't come up with one reason, you're not going to remember. Because reasons reap results. Reasons reap results. Reasons reap rewards, right? Simon Sinek, start with why. Right? Always get into this. So ask yourself why, and the questions that makes all the difference. So first question, how can I use this? And that's the creativity, you come up with all these ideas. Why must I use this? The reasons why. And then the third question I ask a lot is, when will I use this? And I think one of the most powerful productivity performance tools there are calendars. Right? It's like that app, calendar app, or if you keep a physical calendar, that's important because if it's not there, it's not real. Right? You schedule this in and then it becomes real and it's going to happen.
Okay, so let's jump in there, crew. Let's jump in. So, love that again, right? Power of questions. You know, the thing what we got to realize as human beings, we are question-answering machines, you know? Think about it, man. There's not a question that I can ask you that your brain doesn't try to answer. It's called a transderivational search. But what that means is that, so think about this, right? So what are you going to eat for dinner on a Tuesday in 3 years' time? You go literally, your second answer will be, I don't know, Andy, I don't even know what I had yesterday. Right, but your brain tried to answer it. So think about this as an influence, because this is something I teach as well. Influence. Anything that you ask a question about, it directs them to a memory or a thought about the future or past, which then creates an emotion inside of them. That emotion then dictates their perspective of the world and their reaction to it. Does that make sense? Listen to what I just said, right? Because when we can do that, that influence it's massively powerful. We can influence ourselves like this, right? By using or in self-talk to direct our focus to change the emotion or focus on the outcome that we want that changes the emotion, right? That's what I call a driver. So when we can understand that, then questions become insanely powerful, asking them to ourselves, asking them to other people. So just to reiterate what Jim spoke about, I love it, right? How can I use this? how can I use this? How can I use this information? How can I use this lesson? How can I use this mistake? You know, how can I use this information? And something he said, which I really, really liked, you know, the personal development industry is, in general, just insane. It's messed up. It's been flooded by people who are not coaches but are marketers who believe they're coaches. White belts, not black belts, right? You've heard me say all this before, I'm sure. And knowledge is power. Knowledge is not power. The classic saying is knowledge is power, but the other classic saying is applied knowledge is power, right? Because if you don't do anything with knowledge, then it doesn't mean anything. It's like if you were on a boat and you knew you were going to go towards a waterfall and fall off and everyone was going to die, but you knew that, but you just carried on partying, then, you know, that knowledge isn't very powerful. So that's the same thing with everything. So, number 2, what he said, so the first one was, how can I use this information? Number 2 is, why must I use this information? Right? Why must I use this? Well, taking it back to my context of a boat going over the edge of a waterfall, why must you use this? Well, if you don't use this, everybody dies. But if you do use this, then maybe we can be safe, right? So that's the why. Very important. So how can I use this? Why can I use this? And then when will I use this? Back to that analogy. When? Well, probably now, right? But when you understand those 3 questions, I love those 3 questions, nice and powerful, it directs our focus, it directs our emotion, and it directs where we want to be heading next in our brain. Make sense? Cool, let's jump back into Jim.
89% to 100% of the people listening to this struggle with remembering something basic like somebody's name.
Right.
Okay, so help us. So I know a little bit of that is what you just shared, that similar technique. So, I mean, in business alone, I can tell you, people's favorite topic is not their sports team or their children or anything. People's favorite topic is them, right? And one of their favorite sounds is the sound of you saying their name.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, most of you in a business setting, you know this, the minute you've heard their name, you've forgotten it, like those car keys that you lose periodically, but you lose their name constantly. And so this concept that you just shared about association with something you already know, is that one of the things you would do to remember a name?
It is.
Here we go, everybody.
So here we go. This is now, you want to take notes on this. I think one of the most important business etiquette, networking, skills, if there was one, is your ability to remember someone's name.
Yes.
Because how are you going to show somebody you're going to care for their business, their future, their finances, their health, whatever it is you have to offer them, if you don't care enough just to remember them?
Yes.
Because what's the message we send to somebody when we ask them for their name again 2 or 3 times?
You're not important.
You're not important, right? And that doesn't matter what you say after that. It's null and void, right? And so people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And here's the thing, and Maya Angelou said it beautifully, people won't remember what you say, they won't remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And that's going back to the emotion again, right? And so that caring is everything. Nothing sells like caring. The truth is, you could always remember that name.
Okay.
And so I'm calling people who are watching this on their BS.
Yes.
That when you say you're not good at remembering names, that's not true. You just remembered somebody's name. Why? What's the difference? You're motivated. So the M in Max Out, the M stands for motivation.
Motivated.
And I would say, how do you do it? Ask yourself questions. You could elevate your level of motivation. You could ask yourself, what's my level of motivation to remember something, or to learn this, or to remember this name? You could say 0 to 10, give it a number, 5. Well, and here's this mind hack. How do I thought experiment, how do I make it turn it from a 5 to a 7?
Okay.
What do I need to think about differently? Like how that person's going to feel, or the business I could create for them, or just learning these skills better, right? Tony says what you practice in private, you're rewarded for in public, right? Yes. And so maybe it's just a skill that you're practicing. So motivation. I remember I was doing a training in Silicon Valley, and after I was done, somebody comes up to me. It was Bill Gates. And I asked him, if you could have any one superpower, what would it be? He was like, Jim, the ability to read faster. And Warren Buffett was like, I've wasted probably 10 years of my life reading slowly. And that's why reading and speed reading is so important, because people spend about 4 hours processing information a day. You think about all the emails and the business plans and the books and all the stuff you have to process.
Yes.
If you could just double your reading speed and go from 4 hours to 2 hours, you save 2 hours a day. Whoa. What's 2 hours a day over the course of a year? Actually, let's say you just save 1 hour a day. That's 365 hours a year.
Incredible.
That's How many 40-hour work weeks? 9.
9.
2 months
Oh
of
my
productivity,
gosh.
more than 2 months of productivity is saving 1 hour a day on something ubiquitous like reading. So that's
Faster.
why we do so much, like for people out you watching this, I know a lot of people are entrepreneurs, they have teams. The biggest line item, right, is human capital,
Yes,
right, payroll.
for sure.
But if they're reading 4 or 5 hours a day, that means half of their salary is being paid to read. Right, so if someone's getting paid $80,000, $40,000 just to read. That's why we train at Nike and Google and General Electric and all these individuals, because that's the faster you could raise the collective intelligence of your team, the more that they can be competitive, right?
Yes.
And so going back to this, the M is motivation. So I would always say, if you want to learn something new, check in with your motivation, because here's the thing: all learning is state dependent. All learning is state dependent. This is the thing. Information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory. We know that.
Okay.
And we know this because ultimately the expert's not always the person on the podcast or on stage. You are your own expert. So genius leaves clues.
Okay.
Genius leaves clues all the time. So when somebody's exceptional in some area, there's a method behind the magic, including for your own self. Okay. So you don't remember all names, but you certainly don't forget all names. Now, go and deconstruct that, decode that. Usually the names you remember are names you're motivated to.
Okay.
You're somebody that is attracted to somebody that could be good for their business, right? So there's emotion there. So emotion tied to information becomes a long-term memory. Because here's the thing, is there like a song or fragrance or food that could take you back to when you were a kid?
Absolutely.
Because information tied with that emotion becomes a long-term memory. But here's the thing, back in school, what was the primary emotion we felt? Boredom, right? Half the room is bored, the other half is confused. But on a scale of 0 to 10, what's boredom? 0. Information times emotion. If the emotion is 0, what's anything times 0?
0.
And you wonder why you forgot the presidents, the capitals, the periodic table, all the things we learned in school, because the emotion level was very weak.
Wow.
Right? That's why entertainment is so powerful, because education, maybe empowerment is here, entertainment is way up here because of that emotion. But when you can infuse emotion into the learning process, and part of that is human motivation. Because I remember the second question, I was talking to Bill Gates about he's like, reading is what I'd like to be better at. I'm like, I totally could help you with that, because leaders are readers, clearly. And on top of that, I was like, we're talking about the future education, and I was talking about accelerated learning, and he was talking about tools and technology, and a bunch of crowd was building, and they said, what's missing? You have the tools, you have the theory, and we came to the same exact conclusion: motivation. Right? Understanding human motivation. Why can somebody learn something, not apply it? To be able to get that benefit, to be able to execute that. And I have a theory on that we could talk about. Why people procrastinate, why they put things off. But going back to the emotional level, tap into the second H, which is your heart. Now, the A, what I would say in Max Out, as people are going through this, just a simple acronym. The A, I would say, is accountability. Accountability. And this is, again, we haven't gone into the technique, but just owning it. Because most people are not responsible. They feel like, you know why? It's because we were trained that way. I get to work with Elon Musk, and I do trainings for him and SpaceX, the rocket science, a huge amount of information to be able to process, and be able to focus and so on, and be able to retain and apply. And he's building a world of electric cars with Tesla. He's building electric cars and spaceships going to Mars, right? But the vehicle of choice for education is like a horse and buggy. How people learn is like a horse and carriage, and you wonder why you're falling behind. And here's why. We all grew up with the 20th century education. 20th century education prepares for a 20th century world. And at the turn of the century, it was working in farms and factories. And here's the thing, it trained us just to consume information. A teacher would lecture, and you would just consume information. But the human brain does not learn through consumption, it learns through creation. Isn't it interesting that school will teach you what to learn, math, history, science, but important subjects basically, but not how to learn. What were the classes on creativity, imagination, strategy, problem solving, entrepreneurship, critical thinking, right? Where was the classes on listening, on emotional intelligence? Where were the classes on speed reading? Where were the classes on remembering, right? Socrates says learning is remembering, because nobody, when I was at Google, they're like, Jim, but we have a search engine. Why do we need to retain all this information? Here's the reason, is because, I'll give you a couple of reasons. Number one, your brain is like a muscle. It's use it or lose it, but people are suffering from digital dementia. This is the new term in healthcare. Digital dementia. Digital dementia, where we're so dependent on our smart devices. It keeps our to-dos. It does simple math for us. I went to dinner the other night, and it was 10 of us, literally 10 of us. The waiter comes with the check, and half of the 10 people pulled out their phones to divide the check by 10.
Yes.
And if people are listening to this, they don't understand why that's a problem, then that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Right? Because all you have to do is just move it, the decimal just one over.
Okay, crew, let me jump in there. So I love that, right? And we all have those issues sometimes. It's remembering names. And again, what do we want to do? We want to change the questions or the self-talk that we're asking ourselves, right? So I am suck at remembering names. No, I'm good at remembering names. I'm getting better at remembering names. I can remember names. And again, that's a big difference, right? So we're directing our focus by the language, first of all. Secondly, I love what Jim said. Jim's just a badass, and you definitely need to go and listen to the rest of this interview. And many others. I love Jim. And anchoring, right? You've probably heard that in Neuro-Linguistics, anchoring 101. Most people understand it, or they think they understand it. White belt, black belt, right? They think they understand it, but they really don't. Anchoring is something that affects every area of our life, internally, externally, and the future, the past. Everything is an actual anchor. And what he said, it was something really cool. Information and emotion create long-term memories. Information and emotion create long-term memories. That's an anchor. That's a trigger point. Could be negative, could be positive, but it's a trigger point in the brain, right? How you think about money could be from one statement that got said to you when you were a kid. How you think about life could be from one statement from when you were a kid, It's that simple. Cooking, the smells, the taste, the sounds, the music. We all have those experiences of music, right? When you're in a heightened emotion and that information, the music, guess what? The tunes are locked in your brain forever. And this is how we got to understand life. So the key thing of his acronym, right, was the first one was M, motivation. So if people aren't wanting to learn new skills like a new name or getting your business launched or whatever it is, right, it's the motivation behind it. I have clients who again, all the skills in the world, but sometimes they just get in their own way. And it's because the future or what they're about to do is unknown, and they get anchored or triggered or information emotion to something that went wrong in the past, and that holds them still instead of understanding or being motivated to step into the unknown and be excited. Okay, so definitely go and check that interview out. It's really, really cool. Jim's really, really cool. Emmett's really, really cool. And speaking of really, really cool, make sure that you're heading over to theradicalformula.com. Remember what we're about at The Radical Formula. We are all about building your personal brand. Yes, personal brand through high-level marketing, high-level mental performance, all to cut through the noise of 2022. Whether you've looked at Steve Jobs, Gary Vaynerchuk, or even Tony Robbins, even Elon Musk, right? They've all built their personal brand. Their brand is known before what they do. Do you know what I mean? So why would you trust Elon Musk? Well, you trust Elon because he's Elon. Because he's put himself out there and everybody likes him or hates him, right? But if you like him, then you look at what projects he's doing. Same with Steve Jobs. Why do we love Apple, right? Because it's connected to Steve, and Steve made sure that information, emotion, anchoring, right, was built right through the Apple product. So you feel cool having an Apple product. You feel intelligent having an Apple product. That's 101 personal branding. So if you want to learn how to cut through the noise and scale your business to 7 figures using these exact techniques, then guess what? Yeah, that's right. You need to bounce over to theradicalformula.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. And really, we're going to see you in the community. Plain and simple. Let's just join the community. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. So until the next time, make sure that you're heading over to theradicalformula.com, making sure that you are liking, sharing every episode that I do of the podcast. and just come and connect with me somewhere. You know what I mean? Andy Murphy Mindset, and you will find me. So until the next time, much love. Have an amazing week. And oh yeah, one more thing. Why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.